Hello.
We're live on YouTube. It worked this time. I wanted to try it earlier because it did not work for my ordinance meeting. So we're live on YouTube, folks.
Hi.
We'll be starting shortly, who's ever listening. It did not work the first time. So I thought to be proactive.
Hey, how are you?
We're task forcing.
How are you?
All right, how are you?
Thank you. I sent you an email 2 weeks ago. Sean told me that you have an instant style.
Oh, I got to email you back. He's more less famous than he was.
Oh, really?
Yes, like, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yes. So he like only has like 300 followers.
Oh, I mean, that's a lot.
I'm not maintaining. Yeah, oh, he's underscore did that.
Wait.
So he got famous because he goes to my fiance every day. Providence College. He's like a mascot.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Anybody want an agenda? I have lots of
So it's underscore.
DAVALST.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Look at this.
Look, he's a police officer. Did you get my last minute email with the slides?
I did not.
Okay. Is it okay if I cue them up? Is that possible? I have a flash drive. First, too late.
Huh.
I can go and fill them out.
If you could do
Yeah.
that, that
How
would be
many
great.
copies?
I would say at least 10.
10.
At least
Okay,
10, yeah.
sorry about
Well,
that.
we have 5 for the members. I need one, maybe 12. 20, yeah,
Yeah,
let's
we
do
do that.
20, so at least we can,
Yep.
you know. Yeah, no, I was doing an ordinance meeting, so I
Yeah,
didn't
no, I didn't realize there was a half agenda tonight. I was
Yeah, I
together
didn't
last minute.
have my laptop.
If they don't show, then yeah, we should square it up. Taylor, where are you? Oh, okay, you're inside. All right, so we have inside. All right, so we get some colors here, so. So, all right. Okay. All right. Okay, oh, Laura, I just want to know what's the big one present?
Yes.
No.
Who's gonna be able to provide this information? Is that Emily? Did you see the,
Yes.
I actually printed out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them are sure.
All right, so basically. Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, dear.
I'm curious measurement. Okay, so I will talk about that. Okay, great.
What are we here for? Their choice.
I like them both.
That's Councilman Richards.
Oh, like your choice.
I have
Oh,
mine.
you guys
You
got
you have your own?
that did not just do.
Mine doesn't match anything.
It
does, it does,
Right
okay.
in the front,
Yeah,
like the rest of us. I'm not fancy with it.
that's beautiful.
All right, I'll take it.
Look, Emily has one.
All right. So let me think now. So Emily is here. You folks are here. Who else is on that?
Brenda, that's it.
Brenda is going to join us.
She is on, she's on now?
She is on a text message.
Then she can ask her own question.
Carol Ventura, can you let her in?
For some reason, it's not allowing me to promote them, so it's just.
Oh, we have.
Now, are you all set to start?
I am, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm Providence Councilwoman Joanne Ryan. I'd like to call the City of Providence Housing Crisis Task Force regular meeting to order. It's Monday, November 15th. It's just a few moments past 5:30. Madam Clerk, would you kindly read the roll?
Chairwoman Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Harris,
Present.
Council President Pro Tempore Espinal,
Present.
Emily Friedman,
Present.
Brenda Clement is absent but is available on Zoom. So you have 4 present and 1 absent. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. So can we speak with Brenda? Is she there right now? Brenda, can you hear us? Are you on mute for a reason? I'm just trying to make sure that we coordinate our schedule and your presentation or participation in this meeting around your other obligation. So if you could just give us a sense.
Should be able to speak now.
Brenda, can you speak? Okay, Brenda, if you can hear us, you may be engaged in another discussion right now, but we'll reach out to you as best we can. All right? All right. Who else is on Zoom that is participating in the topics tonight? Do we have anything? Yeah.
So Brenda is about to join and she can unmute herself. We may be able to hear her. There she is.
Beautiful. Hi, Brenda. You're muted. Still muted, my friend. I see Carol Ventura is here, Executive Director of Rhode Island Health. Okay, why don't we read the first item into the record, please?
Item number 1, immediate needs, discussion of available city-owned properties, hotel program update, and ARPA utilization update. The presentation will be given by Emily Friedman, who is a member of our task force.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily, for pulling together the information that we asked you to today. Is there anyone else that will be joining you in this presentation? No?
No,
You got it?
no,
Okay.
it's not.
Do you have a handout?
I do. A PowerPoint presentation was distributed. There should be some extra.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get this. Let's get this into the record first, okay? So Madam Clerk, it's been distributed to the committee members?
It has.
Okay. Any council members here that I'm not seeing? No? Okay. All right, so let's, I'd like to entertain a motion to enter on a PowerPoint presentation. It appears to be, well, it's a number of pages long, it doesn't have page numbers. It's entitled Housing Crisis Immediate Need Updates, Department of Planning and Development, Division of Housing and Community Development, dated November 15, 2021. May I have?
I would like to make a motion to enter this into the document as described, Madam Chair, is the record.
Second,
Exhibit 1A.
As Exhibit 1A.
Exhibit 1A.
Okay,
second,
so we have a motion by the Vice Chair Harris, seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor?
aye,
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, are there any other exhibits necessary for your presentation?
Not at this time.
Okay, wonderful. Please continue.
Good
We
evening.
have the floor.
Good evening, Emily Friedman, Director of Community Development from the city. I appreciate the opportunity to brief this group tonight on some material and relevant updates around crisis response that can help inform and add context to tonight and future decisions, tonight and future work. I believe everyone should have a copy of the Housing Crisis Immediate Need Update PowerPoint. I wanted to provide an update tonight since we last met on the non-congregate winter shelter front. I'm sure all are aware, recently the Consolidated Homeless Fund, which is a funding partnership with Rhode Island Office of Housing and Community Development, the city, the municipal entitlements within the state of Rhode Island DHS, and the Housing Resources Commission. This collective funding partnership consortium recently issued a winter shelter RFP with the goal of bringing additional shelter beds online for the November through March period. In total, that RFP received 9 responses, of which 8 were responsive to the goals and objectives of the RFP. All of those responsive proposals were awarded and will be funded with state FEMA funds, state CDBG-CD and ESG-CD, and Housing Resources Commission funding. In total, there are 8 awardees spread throughout the state. And through that winter RFP, this will bring online an additional 217 winter shelter beds and 277 if the Echo Village proposal identifies the site. An important note under that recent award is that Crossroads Rhode Island, as a recipient, will be assuming management of the state's non-congregate hotel shelter contract.
Could I just interrupt you?
Sure,
please?
of course.
So new beds added 217 through this initiative. When will they be online?
They are coming online sort of piecemeal. Some were ready to go from November 1st. Others are subject to availability of sites and securing of contracts.
So worst case scenario, when will all of them be online? So we know as early as November 1st, some were online. When will the remainder come to fruition?
I believe the goal is to have as many operational as soon as possible, and contracts have been getting issued by the State Office of Housing and Community Development on or about November 1st. However, later on in the presentation, we'll talk about the remaining
Fair
gaps that we need to still address here.
Fair enough. Please continue.
On a positive note, the state has received notification that FEMA reimbursement, which was questionable, has been extended to April of 2022. This thankfully provides some reliability and to the state hotel contract that we've not had in previous iterations, given that it was being reimbursed and renewed and over the short term. So effective as of today, the scattered site hotels that have been in operation are being consolidated and clients are being transitioned to a single hotel, which is the Nilo in Warwick. In total, that facility will house 150 beds, which is a net increase of about 30 beds from where we were previously. Placement in any new beds.
So
that
it's
are-
not just beds, it's also supportive services, correct?
Supportive services, meals, case management.
Okay, thank you.
And placement in any new beds that are brought online will be conducted in accordance with coordinated entry. However, as we've heard previously from providers who presented to this task force, there are hundreds of people who are currently living outside and unsheltered in places not meant for human habitation. In the last 14 days of October, that was 335 individuals. So the continuum of care estimates that our system is still short approximately 150 beds going into the winter season. I will note that you'll hear statistics on the need, either in a 30-day statistic or a 14-day statistic. So if you're looking at the 30-day statistic of folks who are reporting as living in unsheltered, that means we're short about 300 beds for the winter season. However, I'm using here in this presentation the recommended 14-day statistic, which is what is utilized by continuum of care.
Is that statewide or is that Providence?
That's statewide.
Thank you.
As we heard in the prior presentation, Providence homelessness encompasses about 40% of that overall need. So of course, continued identification of beds is a critical priority. That most recent RFP did not include proposals for additional family beds and did not have a significant increase of beds within the urban core. So you did not see very many Providence or Pawtucket responses. As we've discussed in previous meetings, we are still looking for a site for the Echo Village project, which was funded through that RFP, but is still looking for a site and could bring on as many as 60 or more beds. We are also still looking at a path forward for the responsible restoration of beds that we lost to social distancing requirements. So any beds that we could safely bring back online within our existing facility.
How many do you know? How many would that be?
That was about 150.
That's a critical.
Yes, and I know Department of Health has done some tours of facilities, made some recommendations, but I'm not sure, how
Who's leading,
actionable those were.
who's leading the effort on that? This is the Department of Health.
It is the Department.
Can we do anything to help that?
I would ask that question to the providers and the shelter operators. As we heard in previous presentations, flexible diversion and rapid resolution resources are still needed. There needs to be flexible funding to enable avoidance of the shelter system to begin with, or to hasten transition from shelters to hotels to housing. Our goal is to have these shelter beds not be a long-term living situation for anyone. And so, as we've heard from the providers in their previous recommendations, short-term flexible diversion resources will be very helpful in ensuring that those shelter beds don't become long-term scenarios or could be avoided altogether. So in terms of the need to identify sites, as we discussed previously, we are working to develop a preliminary shortlist of vacant surplus properties that lend themselves to redevelopment as shelter or housing to be shared with the council soon for discussion. Our goal is to have a comprehensive list, a complete list, shortly after January 1st.
January 1st?
For the full list.
Okay.
As we've discussed previously, we're talking about hundreds of parcels that require, at this point, field inspections, a review for zoning, a review for whether or not it is buildable, a review for adjacent uses. And this is of course a multi-departmental effort. So, and certainly want to share that with the council.
Question.
Vice Chair Harris, please continue.
Yeah, a question. I like the idea of this list, and Councilman and I have been talking about this, shared with the council, meaning the entire body of the council.
Yes.
We appreciate that.
Yes.
We'd like to see this listed for the public.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize that. I know he and I had talked about it like Monday.
I'd be interested in having the policy office get this list.
Sure.
I understand it's a working list, but we really need to get to work here. Time is fleeting here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
So-
we just want to make sure that we're sharing information that's been properly vetted, that it's accurate before we disseminate it. Because
Right, so-
especially it's a crisis and all of our time is limited, and so we want to make sure it's productive
It's probably
exercise.
best that way. so
All right.
We don't have to go
Well,
back and forth.
yeah.
Well, whatever it is, it'll be vetted in this committee fully. Okay.
Thank you.
But with the understanding that this will go before the council, we get to see the list.
Well, the council we'll see the list. We'll all see the list.
Yeah, I'll see the list.
I don't think we should be hiding anything. We should have everything, should be transparent, and we should be knowing, we should know what we're talking about. And if
Right.
they're not good locations, those reasons need to be brought forth. And we need to find solutions, because we're in a crisis.
Right.
We need to find beds. We have people that are sleeping outside. It's unacceptable. It's not gonna happen on my watch. So we're all gonna pitch in. We all gotta work together. We all
Absolutely.
gotta figure this out.
I agree.
Okay.
That is the
Please
purpose.
continue.
So I'm hoping to pivot now to just give an update on some resources that we can bring to bear in this situation. Some topical updates that have occurred since we last met. As I believe most are aware, the city has impaneled a COVID-19 recovery and resiliency task force that has been meeting weekly since July to develop recommendations based on community input, canvassing, multilingual surveys, listening sessions, roundtables, engagement with city departments, local nonprofits, and community groups. It's probably come as no surprise that housing and homelessness was consistently identified as one of the highest priorities. The task force recently voted to recommend that the council devote no less than 25% of the city's ARPA funding on housing. That equates to approximately $28 million in additional investment in housing and homelessness. Next, the task force will release their draft report, which will be shared with the council, who will develop and pass an ARPA ordinance. And of course, this is in addition to the initial first ordinance that had an allotment for emergency housing.
So can you provide this body with an update on that $500,000 that was, we passed it, the council moved very, very quickly and saw it as an immediate need.
Yes.
We took very aggressive approaches to get it passed.
Mhm.
What are you doing with the $500,000 that was identified as an immediate need?
Sure. I believe I can share that has been sole sourced to Parks Roads. Their contract negotiation is underway and an announcement is forthcoming.
Okay.
And that is in
When-
relation to what? The hotel?
Vice Chair Harris?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'd like
Yeah,
to-
hotel and diversion.
Do you know what the capacity is?
In terms of additional,
The number of people that will be served?
I can't cite that up. Again, it's contract negotiation, so
Okay.
don't have the final.
All righty.
Uh,
When will you, so you're negotiating now with Crossroads?
Yes.
When do you think that you will come to agreement on that? How far away, how far along?
I would say days.
Okay, perfect, okay. Could I ask that you brief me immediately when that contract is signed?
Absolutely.
Thank you, and I will inform everyone else here, so that we can take appropriate action. Okay, what else you have?
I also wanted to bring to your attention and circle back to additional rescue plan funding around housing and homelessness. Some may recall that the rescue plan included language around a supplemental allocation of home investment partnerships program funding, our home HOME funds.
Yep.
We recently received, HUD recently released the implementing guidance for targeting those home funds that we're going to be receiving, and has provided info sessions, TA, and templates to help cities mobilize on these funds. To access the funds, the city must conduct an updated homeless needs inventory and gap analysis, which is now underway. We need to solicit comment and feedback on priority needs from providers, developers, and other stakeholders. And then HUD requires us to draft what's called the Home ARP Allocation Plan, which will post for public hearing and comment. The goal will be to issue an RFP alongside our CDBG and home annual RFPs. So stay tuned, there's more to come on this, but like our other HUD dollars, this will flow through the IRP process.
Are they releasing any bureaucratic or, complicated guidelines relative to this program?
So
that
many.
I hope they do, so that we can get these funds out quickly.
Oh, I meant bureaucratic in a negative way, but the goal is to try to deploy as quickly as possible. This is on an accelerated timeline. So unlike our typical CDG or home process where we submit an action plan to HUD and typically the funds don't arrive until the new fiscal year, these funds will be available as soon as we put out an allocation.
Okay.
So we would be able to contract with providers and the projects that we award immediately as opposed to having to wait until after July 1st.
So I would imagine that part of your gap analysis and your homeless needs analysis, you'll be good to go as soon as the money is made available.
Yes.
To be able to release it and get the money out.
Yes, so the goal is expedited timeline, and to be able to sign contracts as soon as we've completed an RFP process, approved the funds. HUD is ready to deploy them. Release the funds.
Councilman Espinal, do you have a question?
Oh, no. Thank you.
I saw that finger up, I wasn't quite sure what you were doing there. Please continue.
My
Madam.
finger goes up and I'm thinking.
So again, those are the topical updates I can provide tonight to provide context for our conversations, and I just say I'm looking forward to tonight's presenters.
So with that, conclude your presentation. Any questions from my committee?
Yeah,
Any members?
Councilwoman.
Yes, Councilwoman Harris.
You said that right now you're waiting for, I guess, information on what the gap is and to be able to allocate the funds. Why isn't that already the case? I mean, we have been struggling with this emergency crisis for a while. It almost like we always like popcorn, we're just doing things, instead of being strategic. My biggest thing is like, we knew from the that we lost the beds during the health crisis. Have there been any among, and maybe you don't have the answers, maybe the group is going to be able to answer this. Have there been any strategic planning about what do we do, especially if this emergency and the crisis? I know there's one proposes the Echo Village, but there is no other proposals that I've seen. I mean, we understand there's a potential hotel. And I noticed these were the only shelters that the state does a previous policy.
Yes, sure. So I'll go in opposite order. You're correct. The state funding partnership put out an RFP, received only 9 proposals, of which 8 were responsive. They were all 100% funded. So there are not additional pending proposals at this time. I think there's going to need to be additional RFPs that are put forward, potentially with these home ARP funds or other resources become available to continue to address this crisis. Because while 217 beds is positive, it is very clearly not enough. What we are running into is a shortage of space. We've heard from providers over and over again that they need help identifying additional locations. The city can help by providing assistance with locating sites. We can also help with an expedited permitting process to the extent that we can. In terms of the gap analysis, this is really an update to our count of beds throughout our system compared to the need by demographics. So do we have enough beds serving folks experiencing domestic violence? Do we have enough beds serving families? Do we have enough beds serving individuals? So again, it's just an updated review of the data we have available, which thankfully our system, the coalition, and our system do an excellent job of capturing the data throughout of need. And so we anticipate being able to compile the necessary data to complete that allocation plan imminently. So once we have that gap analysis, that will help us identify specifically what we want to issue an RFP for. As I noted earlier, the state issued a broad RFP, and so we ended up not getting proposals for Pawtucket or the urban core. We didn't get targeted responses for families, and so we know that there are gaps that exist in our system, and we will need to target any future RFPs to address those specific gaps. In terms of a strategic plan, I would say there's been a state homeless response team, and continuum of care have been working throughout this crisis. There are so many calls per week of all these great folks who are working diligently to try to address the needs in our system, and are working against
Who on the city is on that committee?
the homeless response team. I believe Hanukkah.
Can't you?
Hanukkah from home.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the council office that participates in that? Can we get a council staffer, please? Just so that we can be close to what's happening there
It makes
and
sense.
offer help wherever we
It
can.
makes sense in order for us to be able to change. Thank you.
Yes, and I want to show you that it's been a tremendous number of folks working very diligently on this, but combating ever increasing numbers of homelessness. So the problem is continuing to get bigger and bigger despite everyone mobilizing to the extent that they can.
Committee members, any questions for Emily? Good. Any other thoughts, Emily, before we finish with your presentation? You good?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Emily, for your work.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Brenda. Is it possible to
Hi,
email?
Brenda.
Hi, is it possible to email Emily's presentation? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, how's the best way? What's the best way? Sally, you have it, correct? Can you do it now?
Thank you, Sally.
Okay, Brenda, we're gonna get that to you now. Do you have
Thank
any
you.
questions or comments?
I don't. I was able to follow along, I think, in Emily's right in terms of the citing issues. That's the most immediate challenge at this point, because we've got the money, but we don't have the sites as of yet. So that's what we've got to focus on. Madam Chair, also just want to make sure that both our colleagues from Rhode Island Housing are in, Carol and Christine.
I see Carol. I don't know. if
Okay, Christine was trying to get into to provide you an update. So if you can let her in as a
Okay, we see
panelist.
her.
Thank
We see
you.
her, the Madam Clerk is trying to. You got it? We're gonna work on that, Brenda. Sally, were you able to get the presentation to Brenda? Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Brenda, you should have that.
Thank you.
And if you have any questions, we can circle back to Emily. I'm sure she won't mind responding to any questions that you have. Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Hi. Lord Jaworski, House of Hope.
Hi, didn't
Hi.
recognize.
Sorry,
Yes,
I'm hiding in the corner.
Yes.
Permission to address
Permission
the
to-
group?
Please,
Thank you.
please
And,
join us. Please come to the table.
Sure thing.
Come to the table.
I appreciate that. I just want to follow up, thank you, Emily, for really comprehensive
Just for a second,
information.
just for a second. Please identify yourself for the record.
Lord Jaworski, Executive Director for House of Hope.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, you have some thoughts you'd like to
Thank
share?
you
with
again.
us?
Yes.
I'm
thank-
happy to have you speak. You were, you obviously have been participating in this problem and in this discussion, so, please continue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Emily, for the information that you have presented. I just wanted to address a couple of points that were in the presentation. Namely, that yes, the emergency shelter system has been operating at a deficit initially at the pandemic of 146 shelter beds. A number of those beds were brought back online, so to speak, throughout the pandemic. However, our emergency shelter system buildings are still operating with fewer beds than what they intended to serve pre-COVID. So
Say that
there's
again, please.
our emergency shelter facilities
Yeah.
have fewer beds physically filled in them than they did pre-pandemic.
Okay.
However, we were able to add more beds into the system, so to speak, through the hotel project coming online during the pandemic. If that, you
Yes.
follow, okay. However, there still remains a significant gap and challenge with us being able to bring all of those beds back into those facilities, so to speak. And that revolves around the lack of a quarantine and isolation facility. There have been significant delays unbeknownst to those of us doing this work as to why that is. And having a safe space to quarantine an unsheltered individual who is recognized, congregate facilities as homeless shelters are recognized as those that are high risk for transmission. And so as shelter providers, it's really challenging to operate at that full capacity when we are still very much experiencing COVID-19 exposures and positive cases. Vaccination rates, to our best knowledge, are far lower than the general public's vaccination rates. They tend to be under 50%, as opposed to what we're seeing and hearing about elsewhere as Rhode Islanders are being vaccinated. So I just wanted to elevate that piece. And then it's true, we're looking at the 2-week number for sure when we're talking about folks experiencing homelessness as reported in the PowerPoint. But in fact, we know that my team alone, I have 9 outreach workers, and they alone engaged with, I think, 329 individuals throughout the month of October alone. So we recognize that that's a significant undercount. So often we're looking at the 30-day number because that feels more encompassing of all of the folks that are experiencing homelessness in the state. That we have the ability to even engage with. With 9 people, you can only go so far and so deep. And so we know doing this work that there are far many greater individuals experiencing homelessness. So I just want to point those pieces out that the number shouldn't stop at the 3, whatever it is, but that the numbers are much greater, particularly as we look at other parts of the state.
Thank you for that information. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Emily, would you agree with that? You kind of alluded to that in your
Oh,
presentation.
of course,
Yeah.
absolutely, completely agree.
Great.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Laura, what is the system hearing in terms of the timeline for the QI facility to be operational?
So at first we had heard November 1st, then we heard December 1st, and I think now we're hearing December 15th.
Which is today.
I'm sorry?
No, December.
No.
Oh, December 15th.
December, 1/5.
December.
So we
Okay.
keep hearing delays. We have no idea why this is, where the facility is going to be located, who will it serve.
So has a facility been identified?
We were under the impression that one had been identified, but now I'm hearing that there's another facility under consideration elsewhere.
Who is doing this analysis?
I believe this is something that the Department of Health and the Office of Housing and Community Development are working on.
All right. Any other questions, Emily?
No, thank you, that's helpful.
Any committee members? Brenda, you have any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining in the conversation. You're welcome to stay and participate. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're finished with item 1. I think I'm going to continue that discussion because it certainly is an item that we need to continue. So I'd like to entertain a motion to continue item 1 for further discussion. Can I have that motion?
Yes, so moved.
And thank you. Vice Chair makes the
Second,
motion.
Second.
To continue item 1, seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. So let's continue that discussion. You'll brief us the next time you come in and how you are and how you're doing and where we're at on all of these items that were kind of up in the air. Okay, Madam Clerk, please read item 2 into the record.
Item 2, immediate needs, discussion related to rent relief program, status update, program design, partners and outreach. And Rhode Island Housing has been invited for this presentation.
Okay, so we is Zoom. There is a PowerPoint. Is this the PowerPoint that's been presented? Program overview, Rent RI, October 6, 2021. And someone from, I see Christine is with us. She's muted. And I see Executive Director Carol Ventura is with us.
Yes, thank you.
Is this-
Thank you.
This is your
Yes.
presentation, okay. So
It is,
first order of business, let's enter this on, it appears to be a PowerPoint presentation. It is, this one has numbers on it. It's 11 pages long. It's entitled Program Overview dated October 6, 2021. It is entitled Rent Relief RI. It is from Rhode Island Housing, prepared by Rhode Island Housing for our discussion at this meeting this evening. May I have a motion to identify this presentation as Exhibit 2A?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion made by Vice Chair Harris.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, we have this item before us. So we are going to now switch to Zoom, right, Madam Chair? So I'm going to ask whoever is going to, first of all, I'd like to welcome Rhode Island Housing. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for participating in this discussion from day one. You have been there for us and we greatly appreciate it as we work through this to try to resolve the immediate need as well as address housing issues going forward. So thank you for that. Who will be presenting tonight, Carol?
Councilwoman Christine Hunsinger will be presenting tonight.
Okay, wonderful. So Christine, you're up. So you have the floor. If you could just orally, identify yourself for the record and take it away.
I'm Christine Hunsinger from Rhode Island Housing. Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
We can. Can we get the volume up? I can have it here.
Sorry.
Can you turn or speak louder? I'm sorry.
I will speak louder.
That's better.
Okay. I also want to note that I forgot to change the date on the PowerPoint, so forgive me. It is current as of this morning. So whatever today is, November
Make that
15th.
notation.
Okay, Rent Relief RI is a federal program, funded by federal dollars. There are $352 million in assistance available. These dollars can be used to pay rent arrearages, forward-facing rent, utility arrearages, and certain other housing expenses. The money will be available through September 30th of 2022. There's 3 criteria that we look at to make sure that somebody is eligible for the program. The first is an income qualifier. Second is that they've had an impact during or due to COVID, so during the pandemic, and that they are at risk of housing instability or homelessness. So the income level for which folks are eligible is at 80% of area median income or below. So that translates to roughly 69.2. So for a family of 4. So folks who make under that are eligible.
Have you stratified, if I can interrupt you, have you stratified the population so we know how many people we're talking about? How many fit into that bucket that are renters?
Yeah, so it's difficult to nail it down exactly, but we estimated that there were about 30,000 renters statewide that met that income level. And it's just an estimate. It's based on census data and kind of best guess analysis. But so about 30,000 renters that meet that income level. As you see, as we'll go forward, we'll talk about other eligibility criteria too.
Okay.
So COVID impact, I think it's important to remember that this program was designed as a response to the pandemic. And so it really does look for folks who suffered a financial hardship due to or during COVID. So we define during COVID as from, I think it's March 13th, 2020 through now. As long as the federal emergency is in place, that will be during COVID. And financial hardship is described or defined as the loss of a job, the loss of hours or second job, loss of income in that way, or it can be incurring significant costs during the pandemic. So I like to use, if you were sick with COVID and have medical bills, that's during and due to COVID. The cost of almost everything went up during the pandemic. If you remember back when we were all locked down, lots of folks, my mom in particular, who had never ever thought about having her groceries delivered, had to do that so she wouldn't be exposed to folks. And so that was a much more expensive thing. So when we're evaluating folks to see whether or not they're eligible, we really try to talk about this COVID impact as broadly as possible to allow folks to see where they fit in to that category.
Christine, are you actually documenting the file with the, I don't know how you would document that additional expense through, you know, checking accounts or whatever? Are you actually going that deep, or are you just having the person attest to certain conditions?
Right. One of the things that is now allowed under new flexibility from Treasury is the reliance on a self-attestation. So we rely on what the applicant does tell us. There are a series of check boxes, and they choose during or due to COVID, loss of job, loss of second job, had to stay home for childcare reasons or medical reasons, and then increased expenses is an option too. So we are now relying on a self-attestation from applicants around this.
How long, because that must be a big help in getting through applications, correct? How long has that been allowed? How long has Treasury allowed the attestation route?
Yeah, so we really switched to relying on them about, so it's November 15th, so I would say September is when we really switched to that. So it has allowed a greater, it has made it much easier on applicants and folks processing those applications too.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Risk of housing instability is that third eligibility criteria. And applicants can demonstrate that by showing that they owe past due rent, showing that they've got a past due utility bill, demand letter, eviction notice, letter from the landlord, or by signing a self-attestation that tells us that they are, even though they're current on their rent, that they're going to struggle to make it next month. So you don't have to have past due rent to be eligible for the program. You can just need forward-facing rent. And so we're seeing some folks come in now who, you know, their circumstances allowed them to make their housing payment all through the pandemic, but now something has occurred in their life that makes it difficult going forward. And so those folks are eligible as well.
Okay.
So earlier I went through the list, past due rent, forward-facing rent, past due utilities. We offer an internet stipend of $50 a month to offset the cost of accessing the internet, utility costs, gas, water, electricity, trash, all of that. And there's no dollar cap on how much assistance an applicant receives, but there is a time cap. So everyone who's eligible is eligible for up to 18 months of assistance. So when someone comes in, if they have an arrearage, we will clear that arrearage and we will pay 3 months forward-facing rent. After that 3-month period, they come back in and go through a set of a few questions to let us know whether or not their circumstances have changed. If they are still eligible, then they are approved for 3 months more, three more months forward facing. And that can go on until they've hit 18 months of assistance.
Christine, Councilman Espinal has a question.
Sure.
Please, Mr. Espinal, Councilman Espinal.
Thank you, Christine. My question is, when they come in because they have fallen behind in their rents and they do qualify, does that automatically qualifies them for utility payments? Or does that have to be a separate application, a separate process?
So it's the same application. When you come in, you're asked what your needs are. So is it past due rent, forward facing rent, security deposit, utilities? So you only go through it one time. We ask you all of the information at one time. So you can come in and need past due rent for an apartment that you're leaving, and need security deposit and forward facing rent for an apartment you're going to, and past due utilities at that apartment. So it's all one process. You do not have to apply separately. You can though, right? So if you come in now for past due utilities, and you don't need rental assistance right now, there's nothing to stop you from next week or next month coming in and doing it again. And the good thing about the system that we're using is that you don't have to go through the whole process again. There's a function where you log back in and we call it add a case. So you hit a button and you're back in for additional assistance. And we transfer all of the information over that you had originally provided. And so we really just check to see whether or not your income has changed and made you ineligible, and then ask you what it is, whether or not you're looking for rent or utilities. So it's much simpler and quicker the second time around.
So if someone lost work for a month or two, even though they got another job, if they still fall within the guidelines, it should still apply.
Correct. Because it can really help you get back on your feet, right? If you're eligible, you're eligible. So we can continue to make those payments and give you that breathing room that none of the folks who needed assistance had during the pandemic. It really buys them that kind of time.
Thank you, Christine.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Please continue, Christine.
Sure. I think this is the slide that you'll be most interested in. These are numbers from the program, and we've got Providence numbers in here too. I thought that might be what you might want to spend a minute on. So you can see the statewide numbers along the bottom there, and the number of Providence applications received, number we've approved so far, and the amount approved. And then there's that demographic breakdown for those applications. So I don't know if you want me to wait a minute on this slide or keep going.
Let's just give it a second. Give my committee an opportunity to digest what's before us, if you wouldn't mind. So, committee members, anybody have any questions?
I do, Madam Chair.
Councilman Espinal, please.
So it's been about 22,000 applications statewide total, and only about 11,000 approved.
So I'm looking at 16,000 is statewide. Those are the number of applications in the system. They include the Providence.
Also,
number.
that includes Providence. I'm sorry about that. So it's only 50% of it, more or less, has been approved.
Mm-hmm.
Any general reason as to why anything pops up?
So that's the number of approved. It's not the total number in a final disposition. So some applications are denied for people being over income or people not being eligible for the program. We've got a category of folks that stop being responsive. So they're not responding when we outreach to them. We need more information, or we need them to do a piece of the application. They become what we call non-responsive, and so it doesn't include them either, and it doesn't include any of the applications that we received that were fraudulent. So there's a whole other category that I can get you those numbers and that breakdown for Providence, but the number of folks who have come in that are from Providence that have reached a final resolution is higher than that. I don't have that in front of me, and I try not to do math on the fly, but I'll get that for you and email them over.
Thank you.
All set, Councilman?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair.
Great, okay. So in that, there's a big distance between the application and the number approved. And you're basically saying that some have denied, some are non-responsive. I'm imagining some people may withdraw. Does that happen? Do people withdraw their application?
Yeah, we've had a number of people who, when we call, they say, oh, you know what, I don't need it anymore. My situation has resolved. And some of them are in process. So we're at
So
I'm sorry.
sorry. No, continue. I interrupted you.
we're at the point where, from the time you come in and start your application to the time you get a caseworker is just under 30 days. So there's a number of folks in that period waiting to be assigned a caseworker, and there's a good chunk of folks who've got a caseworker and are somewhere within the 10-day period. From the time you get assigned to the time there's a final resolution is 10 days. So there's a good number of folks who are in process there too.
So can we get those breakdowns? Because I do think that's important to really get an idea of what's happening with these applications.
Sure.
And then the other question I have, so you're saying it's under 30 days for implementation of the service or to get the assistance. How do you manage when they come off? How does that work? So they get on, they get approved, and you're saying it's a certain months that they're on, they get approval for? So does each case get 18 months or whatever the time period is? It is 18 months assistance, isn't it?
It's up
Does
to
everyone
18
get the
months.
same amount? Everybody gets 18 months.
No.
Nope.
So
Explain that, please.
yep. So it's up to 18 months. So when each applicant comes in, they either, they have a number of months that they owe past due, so 0, 5, 12, whatever it is. So once they're approved, the arrearage gets cleared. So let's say you're at 12 months past due, you get that cleared up. So that's 12 months, and we approve you for 3 months going forward. So that'll bring you to 15. At the end of that, in the middle of that 3rd month, before the rent is due again, we ask you to come in and recertify. So tell us that you need additional assistance. Go through those, couple of questions. We make sure that you're still income qualified, all of that. And we approve you again for 3 months forward facing. So you get it in 3-month chunks up until the point that you cap out at the 18 months. Once you've hit your 18 months, we can't recertify you, right? So there's just no mechanism through this program to assist you any further. So it really depends on how many months you owe past due when you come in, how far in the future you may be eligible to receive additional assistance.
Have you had anyone cycle out? How many people have gotten to that 18-month period?
Yeah, I'll have to look to see exactly how many, but we've had a few. And it's not the majority, but we've had a few.
So then my next question is, what happens to those folks?
Yeah, this
You don't
program.
have to answer me now. I'd like you to provide that information. And I guess what I'm getting at is in that last period, that last 3-month segment, so we know that they're gonna be cycling out at 18 months. So that last 3-month period, what resources are made available to them, recognizing that they're going to be coming off this program? Is that something that you have contemplated, or the program has designed some type of a service for those folks? No?
I'm happy to provide you
Okay.
in writing
All
an
right.
answer. Sure.
If you could put that together for us, we'd really like to see, thank you so much for this presentation. We greatly appreciate it. It's very helpful. We'd like to see what's going on between application and approval, all of the status components that are applicable. You mentioned many of them: the denial, non-responsive, withdrawal, fraudulent, and then obviously the remainder is the in process. And then the timing of the assistance that is provided and what service components are provided to people, particularly in that last 3-month period. That'd be great.
Sure.
Council people, anybody, committee members, anybody have a question for? Okay, Emily, please.
I'm not not sure if this is accurate, but I've heard reference to the fact there's more than one pot of rent relief, and the second pot is not contingent or as heavily contingent upon COVID-related impact. Is that accurate?
Sure. There are two pots of money. One came through the Consolidated Appropriation Act of December 2020, and that's worth 200 million. The second pot came through the American Rescue Package, and that's worth 152 million. The 200 million requires that your financial hardship be due to COVID. So because of the pandemic, like directly related or indirectly related. The second pot of money is during COVID. So it gets much simpler, I think, for folks who are making application and who are filling out those check boxes to understand during COVID, right? There's no, you don't have to wonder whether or not it was directly linked to, and what does that mean and all of that. So the first pot has become much simpler under the new guidelines from Treasury, much more streamlined and much easier to access through the application the way we've designed it. But the second bucket really is just a financial hardship during COVID. Does that make sense?
Also, anybody else? Vice Chair Harris?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. Does any part of this funding match anything that we're talking about today, which is the crisis, the housing crisis that we're up against today? We're looking at rapid response now, and a lot of these agencies are trying to figure it out, whether it's in hotels or some type of temporary shelter. Could any of those plots be used to assist in rents for unsheltered folks? I know this is the one that's coming down with rent releases, people who are in addiction.
So you are, it can help folks who are unhoused. When they can apply, and we ask the question whether or not you're, homeless or unhoused, and we give them a pre-approval letter for a security deposit in 3 months forward facing rent, so that they can take that with them as they look for an apartment. In a very limited number of situations, we can pay for a hotel, but it's not the silver bullet that I think everybody would like it to be, and here's why. You need to be a renter to be eligible for this program. That's the first criteria. It's the one I always skip because everybody knows the program's for renters, but it is a requirement that you're a renter. And if you're living in a hotel or want to stay in a hotel, in order to be considered a tenant, you have to be there for 30 consecutive days. And so the program can't help you until you've paid for the hotel for 30 consecutive days. It also isn't a great fit for folks who are chronically homeless. Typically, their hardship began prior to COVID. So it's not, like I said, a great fit on that COVID hardship piece. And the other thing is that rent relief is really just a mechanism for payment. It doesn't necessarily have the connection to the service component that some of the chronically homeless folks might need. And so it's a tight fit on the folks who can come through this program and be eligible for assistance in staying in a hotel. And we try to work with everybody who comes in, but not everybody will meet those eligibility requirements around it.
Thank you.
Well,
Councilman Espinel?
thank you, Madam Chair. Just another question. So this program started about 8-9 months ago, Christine? Is that correct?
Launched on March 31st.
So about 9 months ago. So in 9 months, we're down 16,000 applications, but we only approved 8,172 in 9 months. And this will expire next year, which is about a year. So by the looks of it, it doesn't look like we are going to use the over $300 million that are available. So my question is in regards to flexibility within the program, which I think you touched a little bit upon that. knowing that we will have a bunch of money left over, one, do we have to send it back, or is this program flexible enough where we can begin to use some of this funding, especially for the people that are on the street today? Because this is more guided, like you said, towards people that already have a home, people that are renting. But there's an emergency here, so people on the street. So my question is basically, again, flexibility within the program.
So the short answer to that is right now, no. On the first pot of money, we have to hit certain spending benchmarks, which we are in line to do right this minute, and then we wouldn't have to turn any back. On the second pot of money, we also have to hit certain spending benchmarks. And at the end of that, once you've spent 75% of that second pot of money, the remaining 25% can be used for much more flexible expenses. They're really not well defined yet. They're called other affordable housing activities. But that is a while away before those dollars will be available to the state. So at this point, this program really just helps with the expenses that we've talked about, the forward-facing rent, back rent, utilities, security deposit, and those kinds of things.
But I do believe that if more people knew that you're willing to pay the first month, up to 3 months plus security deposit, that maybe more people will be applying for this program to try to find an apartment.
So we do, we're doing pretty extensive outreach to let people know that, and we're doing pop-ups in a variety of different communities, including Providence. We're working with different community partners, and recently just put out an RFP to secure additional partners so that we can make sure that as many people as possible are aware of what they could be eligible for if they came in and applied.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. So I'm interested in the benchmark dates. I've worked with federal programs, so I'm intimately familiar knowing when those benchmarks hit and the flexibility that's provided after that. So I'd like to know what the benchmark dates are and where we are at on both of those pots of funds, if you will. Because I know the treasurer wants these funds put to good use. So we're all on the same page here. Okay. Continue, please, Christine. We appreciate your answering all those questions for us.
Sure.
Please continue.
The main way to access the application is through rentreliefri.com. Tenants and landlords can apply for assistance there. It's pretty user-friendly now. It's gotten better and better and more user-friendly. We've got a call center that can answer questions and kind of give folks some helpful hints about how to complete certain things. We've got 10 partners throughout the state right now who offer in-person assistance or help over Zoom, help over the phone. They take documents through the mail if it's required, so people who are not willing to or not able to leave their home can also benefit from the program. We really rely on those partners to kind of reach difficult populations and provide targeted assistance for tenants in the eviction process. So you may know, may have seen or heard that we've got folks in the courthouses throughout the state who are there at that last point, right? When someone walks into an eviction hearing, when they come out, they could have, lost their home. So we are able to assist people on their way into court, whether it's to finalize and complete an application or to start one. We work very closely with the Center for Justice and Rhode Island Legal Services to make sure that the tenants in this program have legal representation, because we know that when they have it, their outcomes are better in court. And we work very closely with the court. They've been a great partner. in postponing cases until the application can be approved, in giving time for someone who maybe just came in and just decided that they want to participate to create an application. So the courthouse presence is really great. So these are the documents that we ask you to
Can we
be.
get I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you again. This is just such good material and well presented. Can we get an idea of the source of your applications? What percentage is coming in online? What percentage is coming in from the courthouse and other partners? Would you mind breaking the sources down for us?
I can do that.
Thank you. Please continue.
This is a slide that we use in the presentation to give you a sense of what documentation we're looking for. I will tell you that everywhere I go and every event that we have to reach people, we say, if you don't have any of these, still call us, still come in and meet with a partner, still open the application and create the account. So we will use whatever you've got, whatever documents you've got to get there. So, there are a couple of things we need to know, and the reporting to Treasury is not incredibly user-friendly, but so we've got to make sure that we do that end piece, but we don't want to burden the folks who need the assistance with it. So any way that you prove residency, right? Any mail to your house, bank statement, utility bill, if you've got an ID that says it, great. We've also got a self-attestation. If you don't have any of those things, where you can fill it out and sign it, and your landlord can concur that you live there, and you. So we've got a number of different ways to prove every one of these. We do ask for proof of income, but if you receive SNAP or WIC or a variety of the DHS programs, if you're eligible there, you automatically are income qualified for this program. If you live in a qualified census tract, and you know this, you can look it up on our website, or you can put it in the application. It'll automatically determine that. We also don't require that you produce documentation on your income, because we know that those census tracts, the majority of folks are income eligible. So if you're working, you can provide pay stubs. If you got unemployment, you can provide that letter. If you filed 2020 tax returns, you can use that. So there's, again, a number of ways to determine whether or not you're income eligible. It says signed copy of your lease here, but what we know is that during COVID, that kind of like a signed lease kind of went by the wayside, and a lot of folks were month to month. So anything that proves a pattern of tenancy, right? You pay your rent every day on the same month. You've got a bill, a notice from your landlord, or there's a self-attestation part where you and the landlord can sign it and demonstrate that you live there. So, and then it's the demonstrating the at risk of housing instability. So that's past due utility bill, self-attestation saying that you can't make your rent, any kind of past due rent notice, 5-day demand letter, eviction notice, any of those things we do it. So we really do. And again, we tell everybody everywhere we go, even if you don't have any of these things, call the call center, come in and sit with a partner, start an application, and then ask for help. And we will work with you on what it is you do have and get you there. I want to mention one thing about folks who are undocumented. We work with a number of partners who have that perform work in communities where there's a high number of folks who are undocumented. And we can waive some of these things for folks who don't have them, right? So photo ID is kind of tough if you're undocumented. So we work closely with those partners to be able to make sure that does not prevent folks from getting assistance. This is one of the few programs where folks who are undocumented are eligible. Okay. Landlord, we ask that the landlord participate. It works better when the landlord participates. They get paid directly when they participate, so the money goes directly to the landlord. And there's additional protections for the tenant. By signing the terms and conditions, the landlord agrees to allow the tenant to stay in that unit for as long as they're eligible for assistance through this program. So we feel like that's a good deal for the tenant and a good deal for the landlord. I will say, if the landlord doesn't participate, the program does require that payment be made direct to the tenant and that they be allowed to use those funds to, pay their past due rent, pay their current rent, pay their rent going forward. So we asked for a W-9 form from the landlord. There's no flexibility here. It's a tax document, so they've got to provide it. We ask that they provide proof of ownership. If they can't do that, we use the property tax assessor's website to look it up and make sure that their information matches who's supposed to own it. And then we ask that they confirm and or provide information about how much the tenant does owe on past due rent. So that's really, really all we ask for on the landlord side. And again, we think it's a better deal for everybody all around when they participate.
So is there a clawback provision if you pay a tenant and they don't pass that rent through the landlord?
So if I pay a tenant directly and they don't remit those funds to the landlord, Treasury does allow us to report folks to them and they can make a determination about whether or not they want to take action. But Treasury also allows for the tenant who received those funds, if they don't pay their landlord that we're talking about, but they use those funds to go secure housing somewhere else, that is an allowed thing as well. So there's not really, we do send a letter. We do ask folks who haven't turned over the payment to their landlord to demonstrate to us that they've used those funds for housing. We don't get great responses on those letters, but I'll say, again, there's only been a handful that have not done it. So out of almost 1,200 tenants that we've paid directly, I know of 5 that didn't pay their landlord. Now there'll be more, right? As we get bigger, as the program goes on, there's going to be more people who don't do that. But 5 out of 1,200, it's a pretty good track record.
Okay, thank you.
And this is just to let you know that there's homeowner assistance coming soon to a theater near you. Carol, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak about this. We have submitted our final plan to Treasury to deploy $50 million to assist owners of properties that are behind in their mortgage payments, very similar to the hardest hit fund. So I think we're uniquely positioned to deploy those resources. Chris, you took down the slide.
I didn't mean to. I hit the wrong button.
You want to try to get it back up?
I'm trying.
That's okay. I'll continue to talk. So
We have it in front of us, but our viewing public, particularly our friend Brendan Clement, who's a member of this committee, it'd be great if we could get it back on the screen.
Yeah, so we're excited about this program. We know that there are a lot of homeowners that are behind on their mortgage payments, and particularly for those folks that aren't fitting within, FHA guidelines for workouts, this is going to be very important. So up to $50,000 available for homeowners, up to 24 months of assistance. Not only can we pay back mortgage payments, but we can also pay utilities similar to Chris's rent relief program. And other fees like condo fees and even real estate taxes are eligible under this program. So we hope to launch it shortly. We do have a page on our website where folks can go and register for this program, and they will get up-to-date emails on when the program is going to launch, when we're going to open the portal to actually fill out applications. So we're excited about this. I'm hoping that we can go live with this before the end of the year.
Great. That's great. That's really good news. I'm happy to hear that, Carol.
Second to the landlord.
So there's an application process, obviously, for this as well, and they've got a document that we need.
Yeah, similar to Similar to rent relief RI, maybe a couple more documents because these are homeowners of properties, higher income level, 150% of AMI, which allows us to help a broader range of folks. So you can see up to around 117,000 in income. And so there will be documentation that will be required, and we're providing as much flexibility as we're permitted under Treasury guidelines. I think one other distinguishing factor about this program versus rent relief is, homeowners tend to be used to providing income documentation. I think a lot of the folks that we're helping under rent relief are really our most vulnerable people in the state. So they're particularly challenged to have that documentation that traditional rental assistance programs require. I think under the homeowner program, I think homeowners are used to collecting information to file tax returns and other things. So I'm hoping it's going to be seamless for these folks.
And that's an additional $50 million on top of the rent relief bucket of funds, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Great. Okay, any more in the horizon, or is that pretty much it?
Well, I think you may have heard of, the governor's 2030 plan. I think there are programs that will roll out, housing programs that will roll out under that, Councilwoman, and that will be a benefit for all people in the state, around housing production and other programs that will assist renters. So I would stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for Carol Ventura, the ED of Rhode Island Housing?
Yeah.
Vice Chair Harris.
Yeah, Carol, thank you. And again, I appreciate the presentation. And I did visit with you guys not too long ago. I felt like this would be a great position for the city itself, since we have direct contact with our constituency. And most of them do come to us like, where do you find the rent money? Have we built a partnership with you at this time? We still working on that from the city to have someone who will help with the applications. I know you have 10 partners here. I just wondered, are we one of them?
So I guess that is a broader question. One of the things we asked you folks to talk about is the existing partners in an effort that you spoke of, that you're trying to build out new partnerships as you're going. You talked about having people physically in the courthouses. That's fabulous. I think the Vice Chair Harris is indicating that we touch a lot of people and a lot of people in need in our community. So Councilwoman Harris has been, a leader in trying to connect this program with the resources of the city, particularly the council office. So that's what she's looking to do, and wondering if you've made any headway in that regard. So relative to a city partnership, as far as the help with outreach, every single council member has community meetings. We meet with the community on a regular basis. Something like this, if you could package for us, we could present to our neighborhoods, but also we have a very broad reach relative to emails and people that visit the council website, as well as the Providence city office websites. So just wondering how we can help, because that's why we're all here. We're here to figure out what's going on, bring everybody together, and put all of our hands out together to help each other along. So Councilwoman Harris is focused on the city and council's partnerships to be able to assist you. Can you enlighten us in any efforts that you've, or any progress that you've made in building out partnerships?
Sure. So we've done a number of, we've had a number of meetings with your city folks and different departments and things like that to promote the program. I think you have materials in City Hall and a number of the different agency departments throughout city government that gives the materials. When we met not that long ago, we talked about the RFP that was coming out and that municipalities could apply. so that if there were a synergy there about one of the departments, the constituent services, and you wanted to offer that as well, that would be a good place to do it. And we've also offered to come out into different neighborhoods and do these events where we help folks fill out applications, and are happy to do that for anyone on the committee or who would like that to happen.
Great.
Thank you.
So Sally, is that something that you can follow up for on behalf of the council?
Yes, so with Hannah and 311, we are working on a response to actually respond to the RFP.
So you're already on it, Sally.
Yeah, so yeah.
Sally's got it covered.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with us?
I
No?
think that's all I
Any more
got.
questions?
I think that's it, Councilwoman. Thank you. Thank you for the
I think
opportunity.
we've got it. Thank you,
Thank
Carol.
you.
Hold on one second. We've got a question at the table here. Please
Hi.
identify yourself.
Laura Jaworski, House of Hope, CDC. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Christine, for the comprehensive information on rent relief. Correct me if I'm wrong, back to the process around applications being processed and funds being distributed. That process has expedited significantly since the program launched in March, correct?
Correct.
So a greater number of dollars have gone out. So while it's tricky to look at those figures and seem like it's been you might want to think it's a plateau. In fact, there's been a significant upward trend in those dollars being distributed, right? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I remembered that correctly. And I do think it's really important that we have such comprehensive solutions for folks across the income levels, right? Like we need to have some great comprehensive rent relief strategies so then people can move out and then become homeowners, right? And we start to clog up. I'm not saying, I don't think anything that's new to most folks, but I want to dial back to some the assistance that now rent relief could potentially have for folks in hotels. I think there's a significant gap, chronic homeless folks aside, but there is perhaps opportunity because a hotel stay is significantly expensive, but we are recognizing as a system that there are folks that are relying on that as a mechanism, either as an immediate solution or they've been living in it for a number of months. But hotel stays are very expensive, right? Like they're more expensive than a monthly rental agreement, right? So we're talking sometimes $2,000 a month for a very a small motel stay. And so I think there may be opportunities for this body to consider because there are agencies that perhaps are willing to support some of those initial hotel stays, regardless of the level of supportive services that household may require. But it might be challenging for that agency or even that household to come up with that hotel stay dollar amount. So there might be interesting opportunities to have conversations with providers doing this work because that's a significant cash flow problem. And so there's a potential gap there that's worth exploring more deeply.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a very good point. So you don't have a question, it was a comment. Okay, I want to say thank you very much to our friends at Rhode Island Housing for the great job that you do, the hard work that you do. We really, really appreciate it. And anytime we ask you for information, you provide it very quickly and very efficiently. So thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for your participation.
Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's item 2. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read item 3 into the record?
Item 3, immediate needs discussion of emergency housing voucher allocation process and status update. Peter Asen from the Providence Housing Authority is here to present on that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Asen, do you have a presentation?
Yes.
You do. Okay, so first order of business, we're going to enter the presentation that Mr. Asen has put together. It is multi-page, appears to be a PowerPoint presentation entitled Emergency Housing Vouchers. Peter Asen, Director of Strategy and Development. Jacqueline Martinez, Associate Director of Property Management and Tenant Selection. Dated November 15, 2021, Housing Task Force Can I get a motion to identify this document as Exhibit 3A?
So moved,
A
Madam Chair.
motion made by Vice Chair Harris, seconded
Second.
by Councilman Espinal, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we have the document before us. Mr.
Madam Chair, may I just state for the record that the presentation for items 2 and 3 are up on the portal. So if the public is viewing right now, they can access those. And as soon as tomorrow morning, I will get Emily's presentation up on the portal as well.
Wonderful, thank you. You're so efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your help. Okay. Without further ado, please identify yourself for the record and anyone that will be presenting. First of all, is the executive director here today?
She's not. I'll bring her apologies. She had a board meeting for an organization that she's on the board of that she had to go to.
Okay. All right.
I'm Peter Asen. I'm the Director of Strategy and Development at Providence Housing.
Good evening, Jackie Martinez, Providence Housing Authority, Associate Director, Property Management and Tenant Selection.
So I just very quickly on the prior topic, I just wanted to say we're here today to talk about our role with the Section 8 voucher program. We are also the largest landlord in the city, and Rhode Island Housing has been a fantastic partner to work with on the rent relief program. Jackie's actually been leading that effort as well, and they've been able to help many of our tenants to date. With the Emergency Housing Voucher Program is a brand new program that was funded through the American Rescue Plan. Again, Rhode Island Housing is a partner in the sense that only 2 housing authorities in the state were awarded these vouchers, Providence Housing and Rhode Island Housing. That allocation was not competitive. It was HUD determined where the need was and which agencies they thought those vouchers should go to. So Providence Housing, maybe similar to where we talked about the percentage of homelessness in the state that's in Providence, we received 42 of the vouchers. Roughly 25 to 30% of the total, and the other 117 were allocated to Rhode Island Housing.
Could you please explain the difference between an emergency housing voucher and a regular housing voucher?
Yes, I will. We will get to the details of it. In the general sense, it's the same thing. The difference is that HUD created a lot of flexibility with certain waivers of rules. Somewhat different to what Emily said about the other funding. HUD, maybe this was in the American Rescue Plan itself, but Congress allowed HUD to waive certain regulations and things to help speed up the process of leasing or do things to help make it more likely that people could lease. So there are a few differences related to that, and there's a specific difference in terms of the target eligible population.
Do you have that in your presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So this.
I just don't want to lose sight of that.
Yes, but it is the general concept is the same, that the tenant pays 30% of their income towards rent and utilities, and the voucher pays the remainder to the landlord.
And they're regular vouchers, they're not project-based houses.
Right. In fact, they're not allowed to be project-based because this is my next bullet, that the program ends in 2 years. People who are already housed with a voucher, when it ends, will be able to stay, in the program, grandfathered, and keep that voucher. But if those people leave the program or, drop out, we're no longer able to turn them around to someone else after that date. So it is temporary in that respect. So
the amount of vouchers that you get is added on, it's in addition to the vouchers that you already
Yes.
have or allocated.
Yes,
And we'll keep them going forward.
We'll only keep them, my understanding of it is that after those 2 years, we'll only keep them for those people who are still in, who were housed before September 2023. So we'll lose
the voucher
them.
stays with the person.
Right.
Okay.
We'll lose them as those people drop off over time. But, there's always a hope of Congress extending or changing, but that's how it is at this point. We do have for all of our Section 8 program, something called the administrative plan that lays out all the rules, and HUD did say that we have to establish a specific set of administrative plan update that talks about the rules we'll use to govern this. There is a COVID waiver where we were allowed to establish that plan first, immediately, and then bring it to the board, but we presented this information to the board of our agency, and they are going to approve that, or required to approve it before the end of the year.
Can we get a copy of that, please? Could you send that?
Yes, I can. It actually is, we did also publish it on our website for public comment as well, just to, even though we weren't required to, but that's how the normal process is. So we wanted to just say, share it with the homeless provider community to say if people do have suggestions on how we should change and operate the program, we're very much open to them.
Okay.
We do have to, the vouchers do have to go to families that are either homeless, who were recently homeless and at risk of returning to homelessness, or families fleeing domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. The other voucher programs we have a single waiting list and are required to have a single waiting list. However, HUD said for EHVs, you have to have a separate waiting list that does not tie into your regular voucher list. And the only way that people can get onto that list is referral through the homeless system, coordinated entry system. We are required to have an agreement in place with the continuum of care that to have this relationship where they refer us to people experiencing homelessness that make up our waiting list.
How big is that waiting list?
We're going to talk about the number of referrals. Basically, we've worked with them to say we're not going to ask you to send us many more than what we actually can serve. So, so we don't have a long waiting list just because they understand they're trying to serve people now. So they're only going to send us, they'd send us a little bit more than we have capacity, knowing some things will happen, but not, I think for everybody else, they're looking for different places to send them once we've kind of maxed out our capacity. Because what we can do in the future, say we have all the vouchers used and people, we can continue to just take more referrals as we go. There are a number of changes, as I mentioned. For the normal voucher program, we recently increased our payment standards to the absolute maximum that we're allowed, which is 110% of the fair market rents. For the emergency housing voucher, however, we're allowed to go up to 120%. That was an optional choice, and we've opted to do so, with the idea that it's opening up hopefully some more units for people.
When you do that, when you go to the max percentage, are you reducing, and I'm not talking about the emergency, I'm talking about the regular vouchers. Do you reduce the number of vouchers that you actually get?
It's
there's
a
a
little bit
balancing
tricky.
act.
There is a balance with it, yes. But what happens is, not technically, you have a certain number and you can't go over that number, but you also can't go over a certain amount of money. But as on a quarterly basis, HUD's looking at the amount that you need to spend, and they can increase the amount of money that you can show to HUD, look, well, this is how much we're spending. We need more to serve the people that we have vouchers for, and we can get the funding increased through that. So
you've opted to go to 120% on these emergency vouchers. Why?
I guess the reason is that we're just looking at how difficult the market is right now in the city. And that if there's a certain number of units that would not, even at this 110 kind of maximum, if there's a certain number of units that are just above that, but are a little bit above that then people can access, it gives more potential places that people can rent. That's the reason I'm looking at it.
Okay.
I have the example here. The difference is not huge, but it is enough to make a difference in some cases. That our current maximum for the regular program is $1,357 for a 2-bedroom with utilities, and for the EHV it can go up to $1,480. I will say also we're partnering. Amos House has this statewide incentive program, and there are a number of units that have gone to that program that are above the regular 110. There's some that are above even the 120. Now, sometimes landlords will negotiate and work with you, but that's just a reflection of how the market is right now. We do, unlike all of our other HUD vouchers, HUD normally doesn't provide funding for some of the other services and things that people need, but as kind of a pilot with this program, they provided us some extra funding to address some of the needs people have to be housed. One thing that we've done with it is that every landlord that leases to someone with an emergency voucher, except for those who are have a rent restricted property, will get 1 month extra rent as a bonus. And then we are also using the bulk, the remainder of the money to help needs that tenants have, such as furniture, people that are homeless that need furniture or need to address the cost of moving, need to pay the security deposit, or maybe if it's a unit that requires the tenant to pay utilities, it may owe utility money to help them deal with that. Security deposits, I should just mention with Section 8 that, you know, the tenant, say the full rent of the unit is $1,200 and the tenant's portion is $300. The landlord can still charge $1,200 for the security deposit. And normally with the regular voucher, we don't subsidize the security deposit. So to be able to, you know, sometimes to say a tenant doesn't have that $1,200 and that's going to stop them from being able to get a unit, you know, that's a barrier that we want to take down. We are required with this program to provide housing search assistance, and we are doing that in part through the partnership with the continuum of care and the case managers that are working with each participant, but we're also trying to provide some capacity in-house at the PHA to help people find units as well. And our normal program, we do look back at violent and drug-related offenses for 5 years. With the EHV program, again, HUD has actually wanted to limit the restrictions we can do. And so we're only looking back 1 year at any criminal history, and we're not denying anyone based on drug offenses as well. So I want to turn it over to Jackie just to talk about how we're actually working on the ground with the program.
Good evening. So when EHB came to the PHA, we're very excited on, helping our folks get housed very, very quickly. So the PHA team came together with the COC, and we had numerous conversations, and we created a standard operating procedures that would work best for the PHA and the continuum of care. And it would focus on how are we going to streamline the processes. Let's have better communication amongst, the partners and the caseworkers. How can we expedite or make the application process a lot smoother? So we came up with a comprehensive shared standard operating procedures that the team is currently working with, and it seems to be working very, very well. We've assigned one PHA staff to specifically focus on the EHV vouchers. She is bilingual, she is phenomenal. And she's working closely with the COC and the caseworkers and the applicants to get the information in as quickly as possible. We made it easy where, we can go to them or they can come to us. We can do things electronically. So we're trying to make it work as best as we can and make it very flexible for caseworkers and the PHA to obtain as much information as possible to complete the applications in a timely manner. I send the wait list to the COC on a weekly basis with statuses of all of their clients, whether they're vouchers searching, where they're at in the searching process, if their applications that are pending information, exactly what information that we're missing, or things that can be used in lieu, again, just to expedite that process. We also have bi-weekly team check-ins, so the PHA team and the coalition meets every 2 weeks just to discuss unique cases, how we're going to handle the unique cases, is there a need for more referrals, where are we at with the referrals, and of course, system processes and improvements, where can we improve things and speed up the process. We also have PHA created separate briefings just for our EHB participants to solely focus on discussing the special incentives that are provided with the EHB vouchers. So again, with the briefings, which is mandatory, we make it very flexible for the participants and caseworkers if they want to join. So we do it through Zoom, we do it in person, we can go to them, we can do individual case by case because some folks are domestic violence, so they're afraid to come in person or they're afraid to do, group Zoom, so we can do individual sessions one by one. So again, the point of working together is providing that extra level of care for these applicants that, have, gone through some extensive, homelessness, domestic violence. So we just want to make sure that, we have all our ducks in orders and of course, keeping in mind their experiences and getting them housed as quickly as possible. To date, we've received 57 referrals from the coalition. We've issued a total of 26 vouchers since we kicked off the program in July, I believe, July. We've housed 2 individuals, and we have 2 more that are looking to lease up soon in November. We've sent 3 denial letters to date. 1 for being a registered sex offender, which is a HUD mandatory denial, and 2 that were ineligible based on their immigration status, meaning that no one in the household had eligible immigration status, which is HUD regulation. And we continue to process all of the remaining applications again as quickly as possible. And our goal is to lease all these units up by March of 2022.
Is that the deadline?
It's not the deadline, it's our goal.
Seems like it's a slow process.
When you say, do you mean the whole process from beginning to end?
Just getting these vouchers out. I appreciate the process, you know, very efficient and I'm sure very impressive. I guess what I'm asking is, can we get these vouchers out any faster?
Well, as of date, we have additional 5 more that need to be briefed, meaning that we're going to issue vouchers. So that's going to happen this week, which is going to increase our numbers a little bit higher. But again, there are some forms that are required, but we are working as best as possible to try to get the information as quickly as possible. We have seen some of the holdups, with changes to staff, with the coalition and the caseworkers. But again, our staff at the PHA is plowing along as best as they can, and they're working very hard to get the information in.
So can we look to our partners to help do some work so that you can get the vouchers out on the streets faster? You're getting the referrals from the COC. Is there any upfront work that they can do to streamline things?
We do send them the entire application, in advance. So they have that application in advance. So when they do send over the referrals, the caseworkers, some are supplying the information in advance. So we're just reviewing the information and anything that is needed or missing, we communicate as quickly as possible. But some of the, hurdles can be, missing birth certificates, missing social security cards, which those are requirements, from HUD that they need to go to City Hall, if they were in Providence, or contact the Social Security Administration office to get a copy of that social security card. So some of the holdups that we're having is with some of those documentations that both PHA and caseworkers are having issues, obtaining.
Questions from, I'm sorry, continue, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Peter.
No, I just add, I think that in the scale of things, the largest challenge and time holdup that we do have is the rental market. I mean, you mentioned we have a lot of people who have gotten these in August and September, and technically we have to give at least 120 days, which is what we normally do for our regular vouchers anyway, for them to find an apartment. During COVID, with our other voucher programs, we have a waiver where we can extend and give extra time. I just saw an RFTA today, which is like a request for tenancy approval when they found the apartment, of somebody participating in another one of our programs who was previously homeless. And that person got the voucher in January and just found an apartment, this month. So I think that's the other piece. I mean, we're dealing with, even if we're lowering the barriers on criminal background and things like that. We have, a lot of times landlords are asking and looking at criminal history or looking at credit or looking at their past landlord history. And so some of those challenges that have been part of the reason somebody might have ended up in the homeless system are also a barrier in a way for being on the private market. I do think it's, case managers and agencies, it differs in terms of how much each agency is helping and supporting that process. But I will say there's a number of agencies that have been great partners to help their clients. I will say Laura's staff at House of Hope have been really great partners with us, working with their Crossroads is another one that really has been doing great work to help support these folks to get it. You know, it's not like
So the extended time period to me, I'm just looking, testimony just stated that, you started this in July and you're hoping to get most of these vouchers on the street in March, next March. To me, that seemed like a long time. But basically what you're saying is you issue the voucher and then the person goes and tries to find housing.
Right.
And that's the length of time.
And yeah, and we are trying to help and there's resources to help them, but it's just, the same dynamics that have made it tough for anybody out there looking to find an apartment are there for these individuals as well. So I think that they are, there's no restriction on them having to stay within the city of Providence. So there are some folks who are finding places in other communities as well, and that's fine and good for them to do that if they can. But by and large, the most of the people that are being referred to us are people that previously did live in Providence or are wishing to live in Providence.
So what type of assistance do you provide to help them find housing, whether it's in Providence or in another location? How do you stay connected with them?
There's a few different things we do have. We're hopefully in the next week or two bringing on another. We've had the last 2 years an AmeriCorps member through the Accessing Home program, who's done work with trying to find units and connect people. We are working with that Amos House program I mentioned, which is the state is basically paying for $2,000 incentives for people who are willing to rent an apartment to someone that comes through the state homeless system. And so we're finding out about units from that. There are other agencies and other homeless programs that are using that same list as well, but there are some opportunities there that we're passing along to people, depending on what their specific needs are and interests are. And then we have some other landlords that we just sent an email to all of our landlords to let them know again about these incentives that we have. Anytime I talk to somebody, certainly who is a landlord, I say, do you have any other apartments? So we're trying to kind of build a list through that kinds of thing. And, anytime there's something available, there's so many people. We have a number of others looking through another program, Main Street Voucher program we have that also serves many for the homeless system. And we can tell people right now, if you have apartments, we have people in, and you're going to have a guaranteed good payment to go along with it as well.
Thank you. Any members, any questions?
Madam Chair, I think you've done a wonderful job. I think most of the things are checked right now are already covered, especially the vouchers connected to overall project. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman.
You know exactly what questions to ask. Good job. So Peter, are you taking any vouchers away because they can't find apartments?
No, not in this program. And even in the other programs, we've been temporarily extending and I think at the end of this calendar year, we may not be able to continue those extensions. But even in this program, you are allowed to do some short-term extensions beyond those 120 days, particularly when people have been having challenges due to a disability that they have the ability to extend further. So we have in the past with other programs had to expire them. And it is a tricky balancing act between not wanting to take it away when, we had a caseworker from House of Hope wrote a letter about a client that she had been working with who had, basically pleaded for us not to allow an extension and talked about detailed all the things they had been trying to do for a long period of time.
Exactly.
So it is a tricky balance because the other side of it is that you have all these other people in need too. And if someone's not actively looking, you would want to maybe give it to someone else. But for this program right now, we really don't want to be in that situation of having to take it back.
It'll be counterproductive. I mean,
Yeah.
if people want to have a home to go to live in, but it's just a crisis. There's not that many.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Committee members, council members, yes, Peter,
thank you for a great presentation. Beyond developing way more rental units as soon as possible, which we totally hear and understand, what can we be doing to be helpful in supporting this work?
I do think the other piece of, if anybody that does know of landlords that are willing and interested in working with us to connect them to us, I think that it's a great help. I don't know if you have any other suggestions or other ideas, but.
It was just mainly, you know, connecting the voucher holders with, you know, homes that they can go, you know, check and speak to landlords about, because again, like Peter mentioned, that is, you know, a real challenge right now. I mean, we can put, you know, 50 vouchers on the street tomorrow, and they will just search and search and search and search. And they come back and they're like, I can't find anything. Or if they go somewhere, they're competing with like 20 other people. You know, and we've heard of landlords, you know, asking, you know, pay 3 months upfront cash or something like that, and the apartment is yours. And someone with the voucher is not going to have that, you know, type of income or that type of, you know, ability to do so. So it's the, you know, we need landlords.
I know at one period in time, we were amplifying the social media messaging that Amos House is putting out about landlord incentives. So we may want to look at, you know, should we put out a fresh round of, through our various social media accounts.
Same message we provided to Rare Housing.
I do have one other thought, which is it's not specific only to these, but we have, you know, the VASH, and we have the mainstream voucher program where you do, there's preference for people that are experiencing homelessness, but you also have to have a disabled adult. And the other piece that I think is a little bit of a gap in the system is the services. We mentioned the service fees here, but the service fees, HUD says they're not supposed to go to supportive services. They're supposed to go to those needs that I talked about to help someone lease up. We do have agencies working with all these folks, but sometimes with some of the other vouchers stuff, people do have ongoing needs for supportive services, and that's kind of a funding piece that we don't have. So there are resources and agencies doing good work out there, but I think that's particularly when you're talking about people that have dealt with some of these challenges or have disabilities, have mental health or substance use issues, that is a really important piece, not only to get them in an apartment, but to make sure that they maintain that housing, don't have issues keeping it later on.
Should that might fit into the home program funding?
Potentially, yes, or ARPA funding for a period of time.
And one of the things that, you know, Peter and I were talking about, you know, with the new assistance connect person that will come on board is creating, you know, some sort of, not only the briefing, you know, how to, you know, about the voucher itself, but more of a briefing of how to preserve your housing, you know, how to present yourself when you go meet with the landlord. What are the things that they might be looking for? How should you, you know, speak to some of the landlords? You know, once if you get housed, you know, how to follow the rules, you know, housekeeping, lease violations. So he is, you know, as well, let's help them preserve their housing, because we have seen in many cases, and I've seen in many cases that, you know, folks do move in, you know, they have a home, they have, you know, secured their vouchers, and the issues start happening when they move in. You know, they're not, you know, following the lease, you know, they're border and lodging, they're having people say that they shouldn't be staying, that cause them issues, you know, which result, you know, in lease enforcement with landlords.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lord Jaworski, House Help. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jacqueline, for this really comprehensive information. I just really want to underscore the need for supportive services and the ways that it's straining other parts of our homeless service delivery system. And that teams like my own outreach team, we are working with partners to move people into units. But oftentimes, it was illustrated, there are no supportive services that are allowed for, right, paid for, and made readily available. So what ends up happening is teams like my own outreach team, rather than just moving somebody in and for lack of a better term, abandoning them and leaving them there, my team is then continuing to provide them supportive services And in fact, it creates an enormous strain on then our ability to go out and put their energy out on the streets where they're supposed to be focused 100% of the time. And so in fact, we're actually preparing to take over the supportive services for a 51 unit building here in the city of Providence, where we have been doing that to a large degree, but we'll now be able to shift and we're able to get some supportive services dollars to do that. And with the team whose charge it is to do just that. So I think it's a point well taken that we really need to be thinking about the supportive services dollars so that we can have opportunity to support people and not have it be creating strains, because then that weakens our ability to provide adequate supports where best needed by those teams.
Well said. Well said. What else? Anybody else? Committee members, council members?
I'm all set.
You good? So I've got some homework for you. Providence Housing. We need to create more rental units. You guys have a big role in that. Tell me what you're doing with your project-based housing vouchers, because that's a critical solution. And I think we all know that Providence Housing is way behind the 8 ball on getting project-based vouchers, making them available. Boston has been doing it for 20 years. We have not built the infrastructure that we need. We need to do a better job. Part of the reason we're in a crisis right now is because we went into this COVID health crisis with a housing crisis. So we've got to get better. We've got to do better at creating housing at all levels. And you folks, we're going to look to you, and here's the homework. I'd like you to come back. We're going to have you come back again. And I want you to talk about a plan for increasing significantly your project-based, can't talk, your project-based voucher allocation. Thanks, you guys.
I don't recall.
What a committee, huh? So I guess for the benefit of my committee, can you please, and I know that this is your expertise, but I try to pay attention to vouchers and housing programs. And it's my understanding that 20% you are allowed unilaterally to flip 20% of your housing vouchers, your regular vouchers into project-based vouchers. Is that true? Is that?
Yes,
is my understanding correct?
You can go actually up to 30%, but the extra 10 is for special purposes, certain purposes.
But the point is, there's a lot of room
Yes.
there.
Yep,
And the room is what we need
yes,
to build units.
yes.
And we need to be able to aggressively go out to our developers and make these project-based vouchers available to them, because that is a funding stream, that's a valuable asset to them to encourage the development of housing in general, but also make sure that we're putting affordable housing in everything we build. We should have been doing it 20 years ago. And I know that that's something that is a pet project of yours, and I know that you're working on it, and I want to say thank you for doing that. But we need to figure out how we can do more of it, and how we and everybody at this table and every housing provider can help get that done more efficiently. So that's your homework. I'm gonna have you back, not putting on the spot here, but it's just a flaw. It's a problem. I'm gonna reach out to Rhode Island Housing as well, because we just need to do a better job of creating project-based housing. That is a critical element that we're missing. We've been missing for a long time.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's great. I think as it relates to this group specifically, I will just mention that our board approved 50 new project-based vouchers in October, and 22 of them were for units that are specifically geared towards serving people experiencing homelessness. There were 14 that were from Crossroads, and there were 8 which are going to be for brand new units. The Crossroads were existing and will allow them to take an existing subsidy and repurpose it for tenant-based assistance. But the 8 additional were for a project called the Copley Chambers Building on Broad Street, which is going to be 26 new units in total. 8 will be from us, and House of Hope is actually the services partner with the developers for that project, who are the folks that built the arcade here, and recently partnered with House of Hope on a transitional housing project in South County as well.
So thank you for that information.
But we can go into that in more detail when we come back.
Absolutely, I want to hear more about it, but tell me, how many vouchers do you folks manage right now? Section 8 vouchers.
It
Roughly.
depends, roughly 2,500.
So you could have a lot of project-based vouchers. 50 is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Okay, all right. So can you do that? Would you mind putting together a plan? I'm sure it's something that you're already working on.
Yes, yeah.
I just would like you to enlighten the committee and, our task force and we want to know how we can help you get to where we need you to be faster.
Okay, thank
All right. Anything else from anybody? I think that's a wrap for tonight. Anybody, Brenda, I know has been called, she texted me and said she was called into the Senate Finance hearing, so I think we've lost her. Right, Councilman?
Yes, I just want to say, just want to thank the presenters and for their insight and the, especially Emily for the presentation that you did. This is a major housing crisis, but I think that coming together like this and laying it all on the table, we're gonna get somewhere. So let's just hang in there. Thank you.
Well said, thank you very much. Okay, folks, I think that's a wrap for tonight. And let's see, Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
No, you are not, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, I love when you say that. All right, seeing there's no further business before this committee.
We'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn made by Vice Chair Harris, seconded by Councilman Espinal, all in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carried. We are adjourned.
Okay. Real quick, before we go, so there's something